One sentence could be costing you hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars over the course of this next year, hundreds of thousands over the course of your life. Not because it's true, but because you believe it's true. That sentence is money is hard to make. Most people don't even realize they're carrying this around. It's buried in childhood memories, it's buried in family conversations, it's buried in the way we talk about bills, vacations, opportunities, risk. And the scary part is once your brain accepts a belief as true, it starts looking for evidence to support it. So if you really believe money is hard to make, you're going to find proof everywhere. Today, we're continuing our series, Lies Keeping You Stuck. And we're talking about one of the biggest lies I had to overcome in my own life, the lie that money is hard to make. All right, let's cut the BS. Welcome back to Cut the BS, Build the Dream. I'm Brittney Kosev. If you're new here, this podcast is where we blend personal growth, business, mindset, entrepreneurship, and consciousness into real conversations that help you build a life that you are actually excited to wake up to. Today's episode is deeply personal because this is a belief I carried for most of my life. And if I'm being honest, I don't think I inherited it because anyone wanted to limit me. I inherited it because it was what everyone around me believed. Growing up, I heard things like, you have to work hard to make money. Brittney, money doesn't grow on trees. We can't afford that. And money always seemed stressful. Not because my parents were irresponsible or anything like that. They worked incredibly hard. I talk about it all the time. They gave us our work ethic, and I'm so grateful for that. But there never seemed to be enough money. Vacations were a big deal because they cost money. So instead, we would go camping, and our big family trip was Six Flags, mostly because we could drive there, and my dad loved roller coasters. I'm glad I inherited that too. And honestly, some of my favorite memories came from those experiences. So this isn't about blaming my parents, but it is about recognizing that every family has a financial operating system. In ours, it was built around scarcity, not abundance. And scarcity says there's not enough. So you better hold on tight. You better be careful. You better not lose what you've got. And when you hear those messages long enough, your brain starts accepting them as truth. And the brain really is fascinating. One of its primary jobs is prediction. It wants to create certainty. And once it adopts a belief, it begins filtering reality through that belief. So if you believe people can't be trusted, guess what? You're going to notice every reason not to trust people. If you believe you're not enough, you're going to notice every mistake that you make. If you believe money is hard to make, you're going to notice every bill, every setback, every rejection, and also all the risks. What you won't notice, though, are the opportunities, the relationships, the solutions, the creative ideas, the possibility, because your brain is literally filtering them out, not because they're not there, but because your belief won't allow you to see it. So for me, things started changing when I got into real estate. Recap for anybody that's new. I was a school teacher. Then I got my master's and became a librarian, and then got a divorce and realized that I needed to make some more money. So I got into real estate. It seemed like a path that was going to be great for me, but I didn't really get into real estate necessarily for the money. Yes, that was a big part of it. I needed to provide for my kids, but I started making good money in real estate when I learned about value. I remember reading when I first started selling real estate, I read Sell or Be Sold by Grant Cardone, and it completely shifted my perspective. For years, I thought selling was something that pushy people did, right? Then I had this realization after reading the book, of course. As a librarian, I was selling every single day. I would stand in front of my students and I would do these great book talks, right? I would talk about all the different books that they could be reading. I would get excited about the story. I would make them excited. I would think about what students were going to be coming in that day, what kind of things they were interested in. And I wanted them excited. I wanted them curious, and I wanted them to read, right? But I wasn't manipulating them. I was creating belief. And I also knew that it was something that was going to be great for them. I was trying to help them see value. But really, in the end, what I was doing is I was selling. And when I understood that, everything changed because I realized that money isn't attached to manipulation. Money is attached to value. And right now I'm reading The Go Giver. I invited my whole bunch to read it with me. And honestly, it feels like someone put words to experiences that I've been living for years, because the entire premise is simple. Your true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than you take in payment. Think about that. Most people, when a real estate deal comes across their table, they immediately think, how much money can I make? Most people chase money, but the Go Giver, it teaches us to chase value. And here's what I've noticed. Every major breakthrough in my career came from serving first, not calculating first, serving first. Just recently, I had a leadership call with my team, and my leadership team they were sharing wins. And it hit me. This week alone, we picked up new properties at the property management company, Starlight, new listings, a new contract in Houston, a win in Alamo Ranch in San Antonio, a triplex investor lead that will probably become one of our property management clients, and potentially a whole new portfolio manager relationships happening with the agents. Personally, I received a listing recently from a client I helped several years ago. And here's the funny part. That original transaction years ago barely paid me anything. That's also when I was in a mindset of, I don't know if I'm worthy. So I was charging only one for listings. And I think maybe I made around $1,000 off of that deal. Most people would have said it wasn't worth it, but I truly bent over backwards to help this lady. We found creative solutions and we got the deal done. Years later, she has sent me multiple referrals, including this recent listing. Guys, that is the Go Giver. That is abundance. That is what happens when you stop obsessing over immediate compensation and you focus on creating value. The universe, it has a funny way of returning what you've given, sometimes just not on the timeline that we expect. One of the biggest shifts I ever made was realizing, though, that money is not earned the way I thought it was. Like I was saying before, as a kid, I was conditioned to think, work harder, you get paid more, work more hours, you get paid more. But entrepreneurship taught me something different. Money is often created through value, not time. The more problems you solve, the more value you create. The more value you create, the more opportunities appear. And that realization changed everything. Now, Carl Jung, who I love talking about, he said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Oof, that's powerful. And my shadow, though, it wasn't greed. By the way, Carl Jung calls this your shadow side, right? What you're hiding, what your ego is wanting to show, and what's really behind the scenes. My shadow side, it wasn't greed. It wasn't selfishness. It was believing wealth wasn't available to me. Believing successful people were somehow different. Believing rich people were lucky. Believing I wasn't one of them. And once I saw that belief, I couldn't unsee it because it wasn't true. And by my third year in real estate, my last year of teaching, by my third year in real estate, I made around $80,000 in real estate commission. While as a librarian, I made $60,000 that year. That year changed me, not because of the money, but because I had proof that I could do it. I was still terrified. I was still scared to leave teaching, but now I had evidence. And so that following year, my fourth year in real estate, I left. I left education, not because fear disappeared, but because evidence became louder than fear. Then the next year, guess what happened? I tripled my income and then doubled it again the next year. I crossed over $500,000 in annual earnings, more money than anyone in my family had ever made. And something beautiful happened. My success expanded my family's belief systems too. Suddenly, people around me, my friends, my family, they started believing bigger, not because I was special, but because they realized it was possible. And the biggest shift came when I started BK Real Estate. The year I launched the brokerage became one of the biggest years personally in commission for me. And I remember it was November of 2023. And I personally made over $110,000 in 1 month. Years earlier, that number would have made me uncomfortable. I would have doubted it. I would have wondered if I deserved it. But that month, it felt different. I knew I had earned it. I knew the value I created. I knew the clients I'd been serving. I knew the work that I was putting in behind the scenes. And for the first time, receiving felt safe. And here's the part nobody talks about. Making money was only the first rewrite. Keeping it was the second, because my family also had another belief. Spend it while you have it, because you never know when more is coming. That's what I was taught, not through words, but through action. And if scarcity teaches you money is hard to make, it also teaches you that money's not going to stay around. So I had to build a whole new identity around that. I had to stop seeing myself as someone who earns money. And I had to start seeing myself as someone who stewards wealth. Money stays where it feels safe. And now money is safe with me. Money wants to grow with me. Money wants to multiply, not because money's magic, not because I'm magic, but because stewardship creates expansion. I really like a podcast called Everything is Energy with Kathy Hiller. And one thing I love about Kathy Hiller's work is that she talks about abundance differently. Abundance isn't just money. Abundance is trust. It's creativity. It's ideas. It's opportunities. It's relationship. It's knowing that there's always another way. And here's the beautiful thing. Abundance creates abundance. You print whatever is happening on the energetic vibration that you are operating on. When you are in overflow, right? You're giving, you're making, you're receiving, you're sharing, and you're saving and investing. You're in wholeness, right? When you're operating from that delicious feeling inside of you, you can't help but walk right into abundance because it is you. Scarcity says, what if I lose this? Abundance asks you, what can I create next? And that shift changes everything. And so, is money hard to make? Sometimes. Hard work matters, discipline matters, service matters. But money becomes infinitely harder if you're carrying a belief system that says it's impossible for you. But money will become easier when you believe it's possible. You focus on value. You invest in yourself. You learn new skills. You solve bigger problems. You surround yourself with people who think bigger. You stop chasing money and you start creating value. If there's one thing I want you to take away from today's episode, it's this. Money is hard to make when you're trying to get it. Money becomes easier to make when you're focused on creating value. And money stays when you become someone who can steward it. Because wealth isn't a paycheck. It's not a commission. It's not a bank account. Wealth is an identity. And the beautiful thing about identities is they can be rewritten. So ask yourself, what beliefs am I carrying around about money that aren't actually mine? And what might be possible if I stop believing those? And as always, thank you for spending part of your day with me. And remember, how do you cut the BS? How do you cut those belief systems that don't serve you anymore to get closer to your dream?